There is an assault on equality, of course. There is an assault on all minorities in the country, on the streets, on the social media. We have been seeing absolutely false and defamatory allegations being made against Muslims. Also to all the investigative agencies including Enforcement Directorate, CBI, Income Tax, NIA, all these investigative institutions were essentially made an instrument, a political instrument of the ruling party, that the Comptroller and Auditor General has virtually stopped doing most of the audits of public finances that it was doing, and it is functioning largely at the behest of the government. We need to understand the context in which this election took place. So we need to see what was really happening in this country in the last 5 or 10 years. And what was really happening was that there was a brutal assault on every value that is enunciated in our constitution, in our democracy. There was an assault on fundamental rights, all fundamental rights, including the right to liberty, the right to speech, the right to equality. Large numbers of people across the country were arrested and put in jails, usually on false charges, such as some of our finest human rights activists were jailed, and many of them are still languishing in jail. In the Bhima Koregaon case, in the Delhi riots cases, and on various charges of sedition or under the these various draconian laws like the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act or the Prevention of Money Laundering Act or the National Security Act, etc. There was an assault on speech, and the assault took two forms. One was the strangulation of the mainstream media and the control of the mainstream media, and it was made an instrument of propaganda and hate by the ruling party, by the BJP. And the other was to prevent other people from speaking out against the government or saying things which were not liked by the government. Many of them were arrested, their social media accounts were taken down on the orders of the government. So all these things have been happening. There is an assault on equality, of course. There is an assault on all minorities in the country, on the streets, on the social media, and indeed by some laws which were brought in as well. We have been seeing public lynchings of particularly members of the Muslim community, breaking of churches, vandalizing of churches across the country and especially in Manipur. We have been seeing absolutely false and defamatory allegations being made against Muslims of this country, particularly against Muslims and also against other minorities. And we also saw the Citizenship Amendment Act which was brought in, which was a clearly discriminatory law, discriminating against Muslims in particular. There was a wholesale assault on all the institutions, all the democratic institutions of this country. Assault meaning there's an attempt to control them and make them an instrument of the ruling party. That assault extended, of course, to the media, also to the judiciary, also to the Election Commission, also to Parliament, also to all the investigative agencies including Enforcement Directorate, CBI, Income Tax, NIA. All these investigative institutions were essentially made an instrument, a political instrument of the ruling party to harass and intimidate those that the ruling party did not like, whether they were opposition politicians, whether they were activists, whether they were journalists. There was an assault on the independence of the Election Commission by appointing totally compromised and people who were under the control of the government. For a long time in this country, after TN session, the Election Commission remained an independent institution to conduct free and fair elections in India. But in the last 6-7 years, we have seen that the independence of the Election Commission has been thoroughly compromised, and it has essentially become an instrumentality of the BJP. Even the Comptroller and Auditor General. There was a time when the Comptroller and Auditor General was regarded as a very independent institution, auditing and exposing the corruption in all departments of the government. But now we are seeing in the last few years that the Comptroller and Auditor General has virtually stopped doing most of the audits of public finances that it was doing, and it is functioning largely at the behest of the government. The best example of that was in the Rafale deal, where before the CAG's report came out, the government gave a note in a sealed envelope to the Supreme Court saying that the CAG has audited this Rafale deal. The audit has found nothing wrong with it. This audit report has been also placed in the Parliament. Now all this was false, and they further said that in this audit the pricing details of these aircrafts has been removed. Now firstly, it was totally false. The audit had not been done. How did the government know that the pricing details of the Rafale audit would not be there in the audit? Obviously, the government had instructed the CAG not to put pricing details in the audit. That was a clear example of how the CAG was functioning at the behest of the government and not independently. See, the CAG, like the Election Commission, over the years had become, despite the fact that both the CAG and the Election Commission were being appointed by the government, but it had developed an institutional independence which was quite robust. But in the last few years, that those institutions have also, the independence of those institutions has also been destroyed.